Um, so are we ready to go? This sounds like sounds like we're recording.
Alex, are we ready to stream? Should we begin?
Yes, we are good to go.
All
Okay.
right.
Well, we have some public comment. So I think Member Hart, just for the committee's awareness, Member Hart has some things that came up at work. She is going to do her best to kind of navigate and get here, but she may be in and out. We hope she'll be more
There
here
she is.
than not, but okay, perfect.
Thank you, Matt. Chair Hymas.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let's go ahead and let me see here. Things keep popping up on my screen. We haven't done I haven't held a virtual meeting for a while. So let me just kind of go over some ground rules for the committee before we start the meeting. You know as well as I do when we try to interrupt a conversation during a virtual meeting, there's kind of this hesitancy, and then there's about 30 seconds of you go ahead, no, you go ahead. So let's just go ahead and use our reactions. If we have a comment, we'll raise our hand, and I will be Johnny on the spot as far as looking for hands on the screen. And staff, if you see something and I miss something, shoot me a text or we'll get you on there. But let's make sure that we do our best to make sure that we all have adequate time and get our concerns out there. So with that, let's go ahead and start here. We have all 5 committee members. Thank you and welcome. And we have, for agenda item 1 is public comment. And we have Travis Rawlings is here with us. Okay, so Travis, we'd ask that you take about 2 minutes and share your thoughts. Of course, keep it clean and professional, as we always appreciate during our committee and board meetings. But we will turn the time over to you, Travis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. Board members, my name is Travis Rawlings. I am the Associate Director of Licensing for the Granite School District. Part of my responsibilities as the Director of Licensing is our alternative licensing program, our Apple program. And I've come to speak regarding the upcoming action item regarding the general teacher preparation competencies. I would like to first thank both the board members and their staff for all the hard work that went into creating those competencies. They are very meaningful for us as a preparation program to know, to reaffirm what we're doing to help us improve our program and help make sure that our teachers are the best prepared they can be. If you didn't know, Granite's program has about 100 candidates enrolled in it every year. Kind of a 3-year cycle that they get through, but we have quite a number. And these competencies that were passed in January were very beneficial to us. We've been looking at them, examining our processes, our program. And as I was listening to the board meeting earlier this month, excuse me, I think it's very wise of the board to consider and ensure that your rules and your guidelines are in line with this new bill that was recently passed. But at the same time, I would encourage you, I would recommend that you make sure that you're aligned with that legally, but I don't think major changes are needed. We're very happy with all the hard work that went in. We're very, very pleased with what we're seeing and using it in our program as we start to prepare to meet those competencies. So that would be my recommendation. Make sure you're in line with this new law, but please, the less tinkering, the better. Just because it was a lot of work for the staff and working with us in the LEAs to put those together. That's the end of my statement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Travis. Appreciate your thoughts and concerns on that. Vanessa, any other? I don't believe so, but I want to make sure that we're covered. Any other public comment? Okay, let's move on then to agenda item 2.1. This is an action item R277-304, general teacher preparation competencies. And we have Malia here, who is going to start us off. Is that right? Dr. Height?
I'm happy to start. Malia Height. I'm the Executive Coordinator of Educator Licensing. And today we have for you the legal analysis that was prepared by staff. We have the AGs online with us who can attend to some of those details. But specifically, we're going to consider the legal analysis of the general teacher preparation competencies and have provided draft 1 for the committee to consider today.
Okay, and any questions from committee members? Do we want to go through these? Are there any changes in draft 1? Obviously, we see one here. Can staff, can you speak to that before we open up for questions?
Chair, may I speak?
Please.
Just because it was a full group that got together to review this, AAG Bill may be the best to speak to the legal determination. But I just wanted to clarify that as you look at draft 1 here, you'll notice that CC2 is highlighted in yellow, and you can see some language that's been stricken. And that based on the group and with guidance from AAG's bill and Buse, that was the language that was determined should be amended, and then the rest, that's the only change in draft 1. So if there are questions from the committee about the legal reasoning, I think AAG Bill is probably the best person to address those.
Thank you. Angie, can I ask, I see that this is the only one that's been changed on this document. Committee members might have other thoughts, and can I ask before we jump in there, and I apologize, I didn't bring this up before. It was mentioned that these were passed in January, and then during that time we were also discussing the mission and vision of the USBE, or the board. And we have since switched over to this more academic focus and academic excellence. And have we, when I say we, I understand that I'm including myself for the majority of this, but have we considered, I don't see a whole lot of academic focus in these competencies, and maybe that's already given with like a major somewhere, right? But where's the academic direction within these competencies? And I know we have public comment who has said, hey, try to minimize these. And I agree. I don't necessarily want to go through and just wipe out and do everything, but how do we get to where this aligns with our mission and vision for our USBE? And maybe that's a relook at this down the road, or maybe there's some things that you already see. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot. If we're not ready to answer that, that's fine. I just wondering, again, as we're constantly talking about academic excellence now, I'm seeing more like right in front of me, right? Create a learning climate, promote a classroom environment, and guidelines of behavior, right? Where's the academic piece? Can you speak to that, Dr. Height? Can I call you
Yes. Chair Hymas, thank you. I'd be delighted to answer that question. It is actually one that I was anticipating someone in this group would pose. So really, when we talk about academic excellence, we're oftentimes talking about student outcomes. And of course, that is our ultimate goal. But in the world of teacher preparation, which is what these competencies are around, it's around the behaviors and knowledge and skills that an individual demonstrates to create conditions of academic success. So not necessarily in the classroom climate, this is just the can learning exist in the space section. But if you look at the other portions of the competencies, learners and learning is our first area. Instructional clarity is our second. and then instructional practice are all the areas that create the conditions for academic excellence to exist in the classrooms. So it's what do teachers do that will allow their students to learn and to obtain academic excellence.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that response. And I'll continue to look over, but I appreciate that and the clarity between what the competencies are aimed to do. So I appreciate that. Committee members, seeing no hands yet, but I know that there's got to be some questions out there. Be happy to turn some time over to any committee members with questions.
Chair, I actually have a question.
Sure. Member Hart.
I have, there's been a lot of interest in this item since it hit the agenda. I was a little bit surprised. The questions often, it appears that they're, as I talk to people, they're conflating the competencies with UETs and the standards. Can you just put on record kind of how these guiding documents work together?
And Member Hart, can we, because we're in this virtual setting, can we direct questions
Oh, sure.
to a
Yeah.
specific staff
Oh,
member
sorry.
if you have one in mind?
Yeah. Well, it's open to anyone, but Dr. Height probably would be, I would look forward to her answer.
Yeah, Dr. Height.
Sure. So these teacher competencies are certainly aligned to the effective teacher standards. They have the same categories as our effective teacher standards. So to show that they are directly aligned. However, the difference is that these are the minimum standards to obtain a professional license. These are the minimum skills and knowledge needed to be considered a professional teacher in the state of Utah. That's the intent of these. So they're the threshold on the way into developing expertise within the effective teaching standards.
Thank you. So it would be correct for the field to then extrapolate that these are standards to get you, quote, in the door. And then after that, practicing teachers are held to the UETs as practicing teachers. I think that right there is a source of confusion. And I hope that clarity cleans up some of those concerns. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Member Hart. Member Wood.
And Director Height, could you also review how these came about? I went back and listened to the committee meeting that we took a full 4 minutes on this to discuss back in December. Apparently we didn't have a lot of concerns, but as I listened, one of the things that was just screamed at me was how they were developed in terms of the committee and who was involved in the committee. And I asked some clarifying questions during that process. Can you talk about how these came about? Who was involved?
Certainly. So this took several months to complete. They started towards the end of spring in 2023, and we convened multiple meetings with a variety of stakeholders in the teacher preparation space. Specifically, we included faculty members from university preparation programs, Apple directors from our LEA teacher preparation programs, as well as some LEA coaches and mentors that are doing the work of supporting new teachers. And so they looked at the UETs and they said, if this is what we want our teachers to be able to meet in their practice, what is going to get them across the starting line as a professional teacher? And so then they developed these very specific competencies to indicate the basic knowledge, the application of skills, and the demonstration of their understanding to be able to help those candidates know that they are ready to cross the line and help our educator preparation programs know how to best prepare those candidates to cross the starting line. But it was probably 30 people involved in the committee writing of these competencies.
Thank you, Dr. Height. Looks like we have a hand from Vice Chair Carey.
Hey, thank you, Chair. Hey, Dr. Height, first of all, thank you. I know you've taken a lot of time with me over the past, well, since I've been on the board, but especially this past week, going over these competencies and giving me a better understanding. In response to Chair Hymas's question, you indicated that academic excellence doesn't feature on the competency side of the equation because that's an outcome. But when I look at the exemplar half of the equation, I still don't see any reference to academic excellence associated with any competency. So I know that this board is moving in a direction where we want to highlight academic excellence. I understand why it may not appear in the competency part, but why don't we see academic excellence on the exemplar part of the document you provided? Does that question make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So the exemplars is not intended to indicate what outcome will come when the competency is demonstrated. It's to show an example of what is something that a candidate may do or show that indicates that they have the competency. And it doesn't yield all the way to a student outcome of academic excellence, because that is oftentimes not seeable within the 12-week period that someone is student teaching, for example. We can have moments of learning, and we can assess that learning within a teaching cycle, but to be able to say, well, these students are now proficient in mathematics because they have this competency, it would be, it's really challenging to do that. And so we're really focusing in those exemplars of examples that our candidates are showing that they have these competencies to apply these skills in the classroom.
And Chair, may I?
Yeah, please follow up.
Thank you. So Dr. Height, what we're saying is that they may not, in this 12-week period, that may be insufficient time to have the academic excellence manifest itself, and that's why we're going for these other examples?
I don't know if that's true, but it's something that we can't guarantee that we could measure effectively in 12 weeks. It's a skill and it's a practice that continues to grow, which is why we have professional learning consistent with all across the state. All of our teachers engage in professional learning. It is also something that each of our new teachers engage in mentoring and induction to help them to continue to develop these skills so that they can get to that academic excellence.
And just one other question then. So based on your answer, I'm assuming that as part of this period of time, the several months where you and these other stakeholders developed these, that the issue of academic excellence did come up, it was thought out, and the decision was made that for this particular facet, it wouldn't be the best fit. Is that correct?
I think that academic excellence is the driver behind all of these competencies, and the committee considered, what do our teachers have to be able to know and be able to do so that we can ensure that their students are learning? And those are embedded throughout the competencies. And I see that Director Jennifer Thronson is online and has her hand up, and she may have some additional clarity to add, Chair Hymas.
Director Thronson.
Thank you. Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning. I think for this one, I really appreciate the conversation around, we're all aiming towards that academic excellence piece. Can I ask how we would define that? Because as I look at one of the exemplars, it says, look at the progress students are making, look at their formative and summative assessment data to drive your instructional changes to meet the needs that they have. Like, to me, that would be an exemplar that highlights academic excellence, because we're really looking to say, where are they right now and where do we want them to be and how are we going to get there? It's one of the lengthier ones. Keep scrolling. I'm like, that page right there. So exam and progress data. So IP3, for example, to me is a good exemplar of using where the student's learning is, that academic excellence, to be able to take them beyond where they currently are performing. I think part of it might be like, how are we defining academic excellence? And to better, like, to be able to speak, at least for me, to speak to your concerns, Board Member Carey. When we think academic excellence, are we thinking student learning outcomes? If so, I think there are at least a few exemplars on here that speak to like learning intentions and success criteria. Well, success criteria is what can the kid do that shows that they learned the thing that we were trying to teach them, right? And so I'm seeing those, but maybe my understanding of what academic excellence is not what you all are thinking it is, and that would be a great conversation to have, because I'm seeing those elements in here, but maybe it's not in the same way that you'd like them.
Okay, thank you. And Chair, I just have two other questions, if I may.
Yeah, I think you're the only one with a hand, so keep going.
Okay, this won't take long. And this might be better directed to Deputy Stallings, I'm not sure. But under the professional responsibility section, and I'm going off the old copy, I'm sorry. The second one from the bottom says, exhibit professional and ethical conduct in accordance with school, district, and state policy. And this may just be technical or grammatical, but I don't see any reference to state law or board rule in this particular competency. Is there a reason for that?
I can try to answer. There are no citations to board rule or code at all in this document. So I'm guessing it's just that that has not been the practice since the competencies aren't necessary.
Not a citation, but we just don't say board rule or state law. We talk about state policy. And that's new to me, because usually we say board rule, state the law, but here we're saying this policy. And I just wanted to know if that was just an inartful use of the word, or we're trying to communicate something else rather than compliance with board rule and state law. So I apologize. I understand what you're saying about the citation. I'm just more curious about why we're not specifically using the words board rule and state law in this particular competency.
I think Director Height's probably the best person to answer. The policy team doesn't draft these, and so it's probably just a different style guide, like style and way we do it, but okay. Maybe Malia could respond.
Yeah, Dr. Height.
Sure. So PR6, the competency you are referring to, the focus is around exhibiting professional and ethical conduct. And there's no state law around professional and ethical conduct. The ethics of teachers is in the board rule. And you'll see if you look at PR2, it does specify that these educators shall comply with relevant school and district and state laws that govern the profession. So the legal compliance is in PR2 and the ethical and professional conduct is under PR6. So PR6 is covering our R277217 educator ethical standards. And PR2 is all of the state laws that are relevant to the profession.
Perfect. Thank you. My last question is, I noticed that when we're dealing with Deputy Stallings and Ben, in the language that we see, it usually refers to parents. When I look through the competencies, we use the word families, and that's repeated throughout the competencies. And I'd want to know, is that synonymous? Are we using those interchangeably? Are we trying to do something different? I
If
don't
you
know.
directing that to me and Ben, again, I think that the
No.
drafting style is just different with these competencies than board rules. So you're correct. When we do board rules, we're pretty specific about trying to be consistent and saying things like parents. But the competencies have kind of their own style in and of themselves. So I think that Malia is probably best to answer that as far as
Thank
intent.
you. Thanks, Angie. Yeah, Dr. Height, was there a reason why we used families instead of parents?
There wasn't a specific reason. They're used kind of colloquially, interchangeably. You will see in the first competency LL1, it does specify parents and guardians, as they are the ones who are legally the ones who can help to inform an IEP, a 504, or a behavior plan. But otherwise, we could certainly make that adjustment, but the intent is the same.
I don't know how the committee feels, so I'll probably have to make a motion just to see how all of that falls out. But Chair, I'm ready for a motion, but I don't want to cut off anyone else who may have questions.
I don't see any other hands. Let me ask Vice Chair Carey, would this motion refer? Are you ready to make an overall motion on this agenda item? I do have one more question in the competencies, if I can bring it up before your motion.
Please.
Can we jump back to CC, classroom climate? CC1. First off, I do appreciate the change on CC2, and I would vote in favor of this. CC1, if I'm honest, I struggle with this word sensitive, and I know that there's been other concerns surrounding this. I'm sure your minds went somewhere else when I mentioned this competency, but I struggle with the word sensitive, and the reason I do this, the reason I struggle with this is usually when we think of something that's sensitive, we tend to give it more attention or more energy compared to just being aware of it in the needs of the classroom. And so I don't want to give this misunderstanding that educators, as they go through this, need to be more sensitive to multiple experiences and backgrounds, but that they do need to be aware or cognizant or recognize multiple experiences and backgrounds. Dr. Height, again, first off, thank you for being here. We know it's been a busy day for you. Not only a busy day, but leading up to this, it's been busy. We'll just say that. Can you help me understand and maybe rest my wearied soul on this sensitive word so that this doesn't bother me moving forward? Or is this something that I'd be happy to make a change? I just don't know if it would fit.
Sure. So I can tell you that the intent of the use of this word was really around just trying to have concise language. I would say that really the intent is that we want teachers to be conscious of and responsive to multiple experiences and backgrounds that are in their classroom. Not necessarily that they feel one way or the other or have a sensing experience, but that they really are responsive to the experiences that their students have and how that might impact their classroom.
So I'll follow up before I jump to Member Lear. So in a typical educator prep setting, then, are educators taught to give this more attention or more energy, or are they taught to be aware of potential needs or concerns?
Within a student teaching setting, they are certainly they're taught to find out what are the experiences and backgrounds of their students, get to know their students, and then adjust their practices so that they can ensure that all of their students have equal access to the education. And it's things like when I was teaching in inner city St. Louis, I had to use a lot of very specific cultural touch points that were very different than when I taught in very rural Missouri that had a lot of farmer kids. And so it's those kinds of things. It's being sensitive and responsive to the things that your students are bringing to the classroom. And I see that Director Thronson also may have some additional comments to add.
Director Thronson. Oh, hit that mute button.
Thank you. I was just in a classroom this morning and they had a newcomer English learner show up on their doorstep today, May 15th or 16th. And the kid speaks very little English. And as a visitor in the classroom, the teacher was, it was an English learner development class. She was busy helping the kids do their thing. So I went over and assisted him, and just being able to see what kind of access to English he had and be able to consider like, oh, okay, maybe you don't even have access to the tool the kids are using today. Like that just became, it's natural, right? For a lot of us to be able to show up and do those things, but we have to be aware. If I just started speaking to him in my rapid speech that you all know I have, probably wouldn't be as accessible to the student. And so just being aware that he's coming in with limited English, that I might need to adjust my instructional practice to get him better access to the instruction. So I think that's all the intent of this kind of standard is really to think about who are the kids in front of you in your classroom. And when that kid comes in that's a non-English speaker, for example, how do we adjust? And so in terms of if you want to propose a language change of recognizes or is responsive to instead of sensitive, I don't think that changes the essence or the intent of this standard, but it might help with the, how much are we worrying about this? We do want, our teachers to be aware of the students that they're working with and the needs that they have. But if that language feels like it's heightening that awareness so far, I think there's a lot of terms we could use that achieve the same intent.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that feedback. As you may have gathered, I'm sensitive to leaning towards a specific group of students just because they're a group of students. I much rather prefer that we help the kids who need help in any category, right? So if this meets that intent and says, no, it just means be aware of, if that's what sensitive means, be aware of or be ready to help, then I'm okay with that. But again, I'm not okay with saying, okay, you're going to drop what you're doing and just focus everything here, right? Because of this or that, but be aware of it, help the student as needed. That's fine. So thank you, Malia and Jennifer. I think I just saw member Lear's hand drop. So member Carrie.
No, I meant it. No, Matt, sorry, it just went away. I meant it.
Go ahead then.
And I was just going to say, I think it only gives you a very short half-life. It kind of discourages comments maybe. But I didn't focus in on that word or hone in on that word, but I had some word, I guess it's just my particular sensitivity to words, but no pun intended. But I had some thoughts about some of the words in the competencies and probably even more so in the exemplars. But I sort of made it, and this is not to sound critical of what you're saying, Matt, at all. But I sort of just decided this is not a good document to nitpick words. And so I kind of let all of those go myself. And I feel like maybe the word sensitive has taken on a sort of a life of its own. And I'm not wedded to it or against it. And I don't care if it says aware of or whatever. But I also am a little resistant to looking at every possibly loaded word for every possible person or teacher, even in this small group. And so I appreciate the explanation, appreciate you voicing your concerns, but I don't see it as meaning anything heightened at all. This is one of many competencies, and I don't see it bolded or exclamation marks after it. And so I feel like it is just being used as a word without some of the connotations that other people ascribe to it. So I'd personally like to leave it alone so as not to that feels like it opens the door to nitpicking other words. So but I also agree with you in concept that this is not a more important competency, and that word doesn't have any heightened meaning to it.
Thank you, Member Lear. And I believe that's what, very similar to what staff was saying as well. There's no agenda behind this word. It just be aware, be sensitive to. So thank you for that. Member Hart.
Yes, and I am somewhat along the same lines, but it is good to I've enjoyed the discussion because it does help, I don't know, explain or clarify or extend thinking. But I do have a desire to, having said that, I do want to look at one change in the competency that we are adjusting already. Since we're changing it, I would like to say, instead of differences, students will respect and value either each other or others. I just have begun, well, at this point, I don't like the emphasis on differences as much as just respecting and valuing others. So I'd like to propose an amendment that students will, oh shoot, now you've got a different screen up. But there you go. Yep. And the reason is because when we look at differences, it's different than looking at a whole person. And I think that's the intent of crossing out the words we were crossing out. So I want to cross out any hint of that idea of differences. And instead, I want people to be seen as whole people, their differences and their sameness. So, or the things we share with other humans. So it's just a motion I'd like to throw out there.
So Member Hart, does this motion on the screen reflect what you would like?
I think so, if it's grammatically correct. If you go back to the other screen, I can ensure that it's promote a classroom environment in which students will respect and value others. Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Chair, I have a question.
On this motion?
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Hey, would the maker of the motion accept that instead of others, it say each other?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's make sure we get this correct, and I will restate it and put it on the floor here. Okay, that look right, Member Hart?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the motion before the committee.
Can I ask Member Carey? Member Carey, is that
Yeah.
tracking your thoughts?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, then that's the one
Okay.
I want to move forward.
So the motion before the committee is that the committee amend draft 1 to replace the word differences with each other in CC2. Any discussion to that motion? Member Hart, I see your hand, but I'm assuming.
Oh, that's because I didn't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Member Lear, discussion to the motion.
I'm just wondering from Member Hart's perspective, I don't mind the change, and I think that teachers, I think these are prompts for teachers, not necessarily a very narrow directive for a teacher, and programs that are developing these teachers. So I don't, again, I'm trying really hard not to nitpick words, but I feel like, and I'm wondering if this says it to you, I feel like in changing that, you're diluting the meaning of that. And that sort of troubles me, because I think it's easier to say to young people, to old people, to say, be nice to other people, and a little harder and a little more pointed to say, understand that people are different and please treat them and please be respectful accordingly. And it troubles me a little bit that we would dilute that in the interest of making everything vanilla. And so that kind of troubles me. I think I would vote no on this. I think there's probably a majority that would vote yes, so maybe it doesn't matter, but I don't like I guess others could call it dumbing it down, but I don't call it that. I just feel like it dilutes the message of young people are different, and we ought to acknowledge that they are and be aware of that. So and again, I don't want to make too much of individual words, but that's what I'm concerned about.
Chair, can I just respond really, because I am
Yeah,
trying
please.
hard not to split hairs over words too. My thing is, when we talk about people being different, that's different than talking about people's differences. And I think about an elementary classroom, we want teachers to really see, and we want to teach and model that people are unique and they're wonderful in their totality. So to me, it's not taking it down, it's actually putting it in context so that we're not focusing on differences. We are actually acknowledging that humans are different, because we're not focusing on just these differences. When I say it, I feel the same way. I don't want to hem and haw over all the words, but this one, I do think sometimes we look at what's different about a person instead of commonalities, and I see the world just becoming more and more fractured. And I think it's partially because of this idea of looking at differences rather than looking at an entire person. So I just don't see it as a dumbing down or a watering down. I see it as a more sophisticated understanding of how people are made up of things that are different and the same. And that's what makes everything beautiful. But now I'm going philosophical, so I'll stop there.
Well, and without belaboring this, Matt, sorry, just interjecting, but without belaboring this, I think that teachers will read their own connotations into that. And they'll read their own connotations into it, no matter which direction we go. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. And if I can vote no and say I prefer the other, feeling like differences does not say that to me. And we could again belabor it and say maybe we should use the word unique characteristics, or maybe we should use the phrase uniqueness versus commonalities or things like that. I don't think it's worth it. I think teachers will bring their own personalities and perspectives and their teacher thinking to this, and they will definitely, in my view, and having worked with teachers forever, I think they will, of course, respect differences, but also try to help students understand that we are probably more alike than we are different, and encourage respectful and peaceful interactions because of that. So again, I did belabor it and I wasn't going to, but it's not something I'll hold my breath and stamp my feet about, but I still prefer differences.
Thank you, Member Lear. I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to restate the motion here. Vice Chair Carey, go ahead.
Oh, no. I have a motion, but yep.
Okay. So the motion before the committee is that the committee amends draft 1 to replace the word differences with each other in competency CC2. Committee members, please vote on it's been a while. Where's it at? In the reactions? Yep.
Where are they?
So that looks like it passes 4-1 with member Lear opposed. And with that, we will go to Vice Chair Carey.
Yeah, Chair, I appreciate the conversation today. I did have several proposed changes, but in light of the discussion that I had not only today with this committee, but with Dr. Height, I am going to make one motion today. And that would be that, and again, I apologize, I don't have the renumbered list of competencies, but the motion would be that we add the word parents to, you don't have to type this because it's under instructional practice. The competency that begins with provide feedback to students and families.
So would you replace families with parents or add students, parents, and well, I don't know how that would work, but this is IP 6 or IP 5, sorry.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chair. I would say provide feedback to students, parents, and families. And then with
Nope, go ahead. I thought I was going to ask if you wanted to speak more to that.
There's just one other change, and I'm just going to make this in the same motion. I would also like to add the word parents to, I think it's PR5. And if that's the one that says use effective communication with students.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I would just add students, parents, and family, or families and colleagues. And then, Chair, I would like to speak to the motion.
I think let's just make sure that we have that you're happy with that, Vice Chair Carey, before you speak to it.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think that, and this goes to what Board Member Lear says, but in a different way. I think when we put parents under that umbrella of families, we kind of dilute their, and I think it's unintentional. I do believe that, but I think it is a dilution of their role in the process. And I think having them listed separately is not just a textual or grammatical change, but is significant in terms of how this board recognizes their role. And that's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Can I, Member Lear, I saw that you had a hand up. I just want to ask, and it's down now, but it might come back up. Let me just ask Vice Chair Carey. I'm looking at IP5. And if we could jump to IP5 on the screen, provide feedback to students and families that support learning and growth. And then if you look over at the exemplar, it says provide regular feedback to parents and students to assist student growth. This kind of goes back to Vice Chair Carey's comments earlier, like, is this synonymous or how are we using this? When I look at this and say provide feedback to students and families, when I think of a family, I'm talking about siblings, grandparents. I'm just trying to, families is most, for me, trying to get things out to like the public, like families. I might find it more appropriate in my thinking, and I'm asking you for your feedback here, Vice Chair Carey, is if we just replaced families with parents here, to provide feedback to students and parents that supports learning and growth. And then it fits better with the exemplar as well, because I think that's the goal of this. And this is a demonstration, not an application, but the teacher needs to demonstrate that they can provide regular feedback to parents and students to assist student growth. Any thoughts on that, Vice Chair Carey?
You would be recommending that change to both?
No, just to the first one. I think it fits better in the second one to add parents and families because it's more of a communal thing. but the first one, the IP5, I read it from my experience as better read by replacing families with parents, because that's who you're working with, is the student and the student's parent to get growth. And recognizing again that the definition, when we define parent, we're talking parent or guardian. So it could be a aunt or uncle that they live with, a grandparent, etc.
I would accept that change, Chair. Thank you.
I appreciate that. We have a handful of hands. I'm going to go to member Lear first, and then member Hart, and then member Wood.
Now, just with your last comment, Matt, I'm a little more less concerned about what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think families is more inclusive, frankly, and that's why I don't care if you say parents and families. And again, teachers are reading this who understand much better than we do, and some of you are active teachers, but of younger students. But I think that families includes those grandparents who may be the surrogate parents, or the aunts or the uncles or the guardians or the foster parents, or the even older siblings sometimes. So I think that the families is more inclusive. And I understood that families is another word that's falling out of favor. Who knew? And acquiring connotations it was never meant to have. But so I've not minded as you've added parents, but I think families leaves in there, even though technically you're right, in our board rule that defines parents, it includes all those other multiple forms of parental units. But I just think it's more inclusive if we leave families in there. And I like the word. I believe in families, and I believe that families are supporting students. And certainly in my area, where sometimes it is older siblings who are the most supportive of their younger brothers and sisters or grandparents. But so I like families in there. I don't mind parents and families, but I'm not liking taking families out.
And can I respond quickly? And ultimately, this is up to Vice Chair Carey, and I support either way. You talk about siblings, and I've worked with many students who work with their siblings. However, I don't think I would ever, I might include a sibling upon a parent request if I can get a hold of the parent to say, hey, we recognize that your siblings are helping your younger student, and we want to include them. I wouldn't bypass, and I don't think that you're alluding to that, Carol, that we would bypass a sibling. Like I said, I'm fine with it. Right now we're kind of wordsmithing, right? And we're saying, okay, we want to keep families in. I think when you look at the competency and then the demonstration, then the exemplar, that's where I'm saying it makes more sense to have the parent, because it's the parent that has the responsibility for the student. Even if grandparents are heavily involved, unless the grandparents are the actual legal guardians, I'm waiting for parents to give me that permission to reach out to grandparents. That's kind of my thoughts on that. But let's move on to member Hart, and then we have member Wood.
I think you just said what I would say. Yes, of course, families are important, but no teachers calling in a brother or sister to do this item. If we're going to be precise, then in this particular case, we are not contacting family, we are contacting parents specifically. By law, we are contacting the person listed with the parental rights. Families are important, but we don't have our teachers calling brothers and sisters and cousins and uncles and grandpas.
Thank you, member Hart. Member Wood?
I just wanted to speak up because I was told last week that the term families has fallen out of favor. I was at a convention and they are changing the name of, it's actually Uplift Families from Governor Herbert's first wife, his wife's first lady. or they're changing it out, they're taking out the word family because they've been told it's not politically correct anymore to use families. And I was like, where would this come from? Like, families are central to our communities. It's a breakdown of the family that we're seeing all the issues in our communities, in our nation. And I couldn't believe it. And then I come into this meeting today, and what's the first thing that happens? We talk about taking out the word families. I'm disappointed, actually. So I will support the adding in the parents, but I will not support, because I'm not going to play into that. I'm not going to take away the value of our families.
Yeah, I'm going to comment on that, since I'm the one who brought up this idea of replacing parent with family, or family with parent. One, I hadn't heard that family was the name family, the definition was hijacked. I think we know what a family means. And then two, this is not to, again, I'm not trying to politicize these competencies, right? I'm just trying to tell you what happens at schools. That's all I'm telling you, is that I'm not going to reach out to an entire family to work on the student's growth. I'm going to work with the parent, and that's what I do. And if they want to get others involved, that's what it's about. So this isn't an attempt, and I don't think you're saying that it is, Member Wood. I'm not saying that you're accusing me or anybody on this committee of trying to hijack or politicize these competencies. I just want the public to know that me personally, I'm not buying into this idea of removing families. That's the last thing on my mind. But this is what happens at schools. So anyway, I appreciate your thoughts. I thought I'd respond since again, I'm the one who brought that up. But Member Lear.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to talk twice. But I actually have to point out that in FERPA now, in the federal law, it does allow people who stand in place of parents. Doesn't talk about having to make it legal. It just talks about those who stand in place of parents, who absolutely can be consulted in lieu of parents or in addition to parents. So FERPA is taking a little broader point of view than what you're suggesting happens in schools. And I'm using, because I've experienced something different as an attorney. Right before I retired, I was in an IEP meeting where the mother of a child had so significant mental problems herself that the older daughter was at the IEP meeting. And yes, the mother was there, but the communication of the school, they told me frankly, was between the older daughter, and she was over 21. She was an adult person, but they were actually working with the older daughter, who was much more stable emotionally than the mother. So I don't know that it happens in every school, even though that seems to be your experience in a charter school. Maybe that is different, and Molly's experience, but it wasn't my experience working legally with different LEAs. And the other thing I wanted to suggest is, if we're having such anxiety about this, though Malia said, or Jennifer said, we haven't added citations to this document, if we referred back to that definition of family that's in, I think it's R277-100, that would make me feel somewhat better. I still agree with Leanne that I'm a supporter of families, and whatever members of that family support the student. So I don't like deleting it, but adding the citation would go part of the way toward letting people know that we really are using parent as a placeholder for any number of people in the family who are supporting the student.
Thank you, Member Lear. Thank you for all of your comments. Vice Chair Carey, I'm going to turn this back over to you. We have a motion pending on the floor. I know I made some comments and you agreed to change some things. After hearing other discussion, I just want to turn this back over to you to solidify what motion you would like to see after hearing those comments. Frankly, it sounds like we're all on the same page, right? All of us want to work with families, recognizing that parents are the drivers here. So With that, Vice Chair Carey, any thoughts? And it looks like AAG Beal has a hand. Do you want me to jump to her first?
That would be great.
Okay. Ashley, please.
I just wanted to mention briefly, just from, kind of a legal perspective here that, and this is my background of work, so maybe I'm particularly attuned to it, but there are over 2,500 kids in the state that are in foster care. And so using the phrase parents exclusively would exclude guardians who are sometimes aunts, uncles, or foster parents. And so that would just be a legal concern of mine, that parents might exclude legal guardians.
Does the definition of parents that's used by the USBE, and this is the only reason that, because we use this throughout rules and documents, parent is by definition includes those legal guardians. I'm glad to see somebody is on it here. Let's see if we can.
Okay, it looks like maybe it does. So that would assuage that concern of mine. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, well, that we do want to make sure. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, we recognize that not everybody has the nuclear family, right? So I mean, it's important to note that, but we can't every time say, okay, older sibling, mom or dad or aunt or uncle, right? We can't list them all, so we say parent. Anyway, Vice Chair Carey, back to you.
Yeah, I've looked at the language, Chair. I think it's good language, and I think it does bring it more into compliance with how we handle our terms and phrases when we're not dealing with competencies. And I understand, as it's been explained, that I think we're trying to say the same thing, but I think by sticking with what we typically say in our rulemaking outside of the competency universe, I think this is more consistent, and I'm good with making the motion.
Okay. With that, I'm going to state the
Sorry,
motion. Member Lear.
I'm sorry, Matt, but I wondered if Member Carey would consider adding that citation, just so it's clear to teachers and others who might read this, that parents for our purposes means families in a broader way, even though we haven't used other citations. Would that be something that would be appropriate and agreeable to Member Carey?
I would defer to Director Height and Deputy Stallings. I don't see citations anywhere else in the competencies. I don't have an objection to it, but if there's a reason why we're not doing it or why we shouldn't do it, then I would defer to them. So, Chair, if it's okay, if we could ask Dr. Height and Deputy Stallings.
Yeah, either one.
Or maybe both, because they each, I'll defer to the chair, however you want to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, if they have different thoughts on it, we'd love to hear them.
Sure. I would say that the competencies are not written in a legal way. They're written in a way that teachers talk about competency, and we are, in our communication with teacher preparation programs, we absolutely would make the intent specific, that when we say parents, we include guardians and anyone else who has a custodial relationship with the child in these competencies. So the intent, I think, is still the same if we say families and do not include the reference, which I think would have some consistency throughout the rules, but I can go either way.
And Angie, I don't know if you had any thoughts or if there.
I just agree with her recommendation. And if it makes anyone feel any better, Utah Code's default definition for parent also is that broader term and includes legal guardian. And so it is a pretty standard, I think, interpretation that unless there's certain instances where a law could limit or make it more narrow, but in general, the default is that when you say parent, you do include their guardian or legal guardians.
And it's true that this is taught to educators by the educator prep program. So we talk about our educators going to get it. Well, our educator prep program is going to understand the competency. And I believe that they would. They've been doing this for a long time as well. So, okay, can we get the motion back up on the screen, please? The motion before the committee is that the committee amends draft 1 to 1, replace the word families with parents in competency IP5, and 2, add parents to competency PR5 so that it reads students, parents, families, and colleagues. Any further discussion to this motion? Seeing no hands, let's vote. It looks like it passes 3-2 with members Lear and member Wood in opposition. Okay. We are still on agenda item 2.1. Are there any other questions, comments, amendments, or motions? Seeing none, I will provide a motion. If we can get the original motion up there, that's going to need to be tweaked a little bit.
It's ready for you on screen.
Oh, is the highlighted portion? Okay. I move that the committee approves the general teacher preparation competencies draft 1 as amended, incorporated by reference in R277-304 and forward to the board for approval. Any discussion to this motion? Seeing none, please vote. I'm looking for member Hart and potentially member Carey as well.
I voted.
It must have come off here. There it is. Got it. And member Hart, we have a unanimous vote here. Thank you, committee members. That passes unanimously. Let's move on to agenda item 2.2, R277-304, teacher preparation programs. We're going to jump back over to Dr. Height.
I think I can take this one on this.
Never mind. Let's talk to Ben.
Thank you. Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. Now that you've approved those changes to the competencies, there would just be two minor changes that we're making to this rule. First would be to reincorporate those competencies by reference. And then second would be to add the oversight category there on line 15 and 16. So Angie's scrolling down to that. We just are updating the date on line 72, and then we're calling this a category 4 because we have full staff and monitoring on these issues. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from committee members? We'll give a few seconds, of course, as we're getting through this. But category 4, remind me, this is kind of a big deal category, if I'm saying it openly, right? Like,
yeah, that means we have full staff. There's regular monitoring.
Okay.
Yes, that's the highest level.
Okay, I appreciate that. Any questions or thoughts or motions from committee? I will put forth a motion. I move that the committee approves R277-304 draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. I will say before we go into vote that it looks like member Hart and member Carey have your vote check on. Member Hart's is gone now, but let's go ahead and vote, committee members. And I see 1, 2, 3, 4, and member Carey was a yes as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 3.1. Request for legislative action under SB 57 regarding U.S. Department of Education Title IX regulations in light of Utah HB 257. And I don't know if we have, like, I have a motion. If we want to jump to that before any questions, or if we have questions on this, if we want to open up to discussion, let's start there. Open up if we have any discussion on what's going on here. Anything from the committee? Okay. Let me just see here. Okay. Member Lear, please. And you don't have a camera on, so I don't know if you're muted or if you are not hearing us.
I'm muted, sorry. There, now you go. At the end of my legal practicing time, I spent a lot of time with the regulations that were changed in 2020. And in fact, developed some very comprehensive materials about sexual harassment investigations. And then I've looked with interest at the changes, and I can't say I've read them in minute detail, that now President Biden is proposing in a kind of through a different legal methodology. And I personally think that LEAs have this handled. I think this is a huge morass that may go back and forth depending on the elections in November. And I think having RAAGs spend time on it when risk management is spending a lot of time on it, that attorneys who work with LEAs are spending time on it, is a waste of time. Not a waste of time. Understanding it is super helpful. But I don't think it behooves the board, when the issues are really LEA driven, to spend a lot of time and energy on this, even as it relates to the bill that passed. If the bill requires a joint resolution from the legislature, we don't even have that yet. So I think we're jumping way ahead of ourselves, giving an assignment to our AAGs with something we don't even know that the legislature will be focused on. So I personally don't support the motion. I think the AAGs direct their own work very effectively, and it's an LEA-driven issue.
Thank you, Member Lear. And I'll just speak. I see Vice Chair Carey, your hand as well. Let me just jump in real quick, though. I hear what you're saying, and I think there's other committee members who feel similarly, and other board members, of course. Frankly, I'm kind of worried about this whole Title IX thing, and maybe I am jumping the gun, and I'm a little bit excited to see what we can do to continue to protect our students and our children here in Utah. And so I guess I'm just trying something, right, to make sure that we are in a good place, and again, that we can protect our students. So let's turn to Vice Chair Carey, and then we have Member Hart as well.
Yeah, Chair Hamas, I just have a substitute motion, and I know this is committee, so I don't know how formal or informal you want to make it.
I haven't put a motion on the floor yet, so you would be the first.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll make this motion.
Okay.
And I think it's along the lines of yours, so I'll make the motion, and then there's one slight adjustment, Ben, that I'd like to add to it. And this goes to what the board member Lear had just said. You know what? Never mind. Let's just leave the motion the way it is.
Okay, so the motion is that the board directs staff to conduct an audit on the total direct and indirect costs incurred by USBE in order to comply with all federal laws, presidential executive orders, and all federal regulations. The audit report shall, 1, itemize the total USBE compliance costs associated with each particular federal law, order, and regulation. 2, provide data for 2022, 2023, and insofar as practical, 2024. And 3, be supplied to all board members upon its completion. Discussion to that motion. I'll turn to you first, Vice Chair Carey. I know you spoke to this a little bit, but do you want to go back, or are we ready to move to another committee member?
We can move to another committee member, Chair. Thank you.
Member Hart?
Mute. Oh, I am sorry. Okay, sorry. In particular, as a practitioner, I'm concerned about the Title IX. That has an impending date of implementation that after which myself and others in the field will be held to those standards. And I am not comfortable being stuck between state law, federal law, Title IX,
State law.
That space is hard. I know that there's, it sounds like there's easy answers to that, but when you're living in that space and you're dealing with Office of Civil Rights and you're dealing with other confounding factors, it takes all of your time and effort and resources. I really just want to stick to this right here. Moves away from Title IX, and I'm not comfortable with that. So I'm not sure yet. I'm trying to figure out how to reconcile the two, but I'm not prepared to have our staff be doing this when we need to be addressing the situation at hand, which is making sure that our field is not caught between things that are swirling in the space. We have to, and I've said it for years now, we have to support our field and provide excellent, clear guidance. And when there's shifts like this, it's our responsibility to use our resources to provide accurate and dependable information. So I really have to figure out how this would fit into the Title IX changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Member, okay. So I guess my thoughts as well is if we talk about an audit on the total direct and indirect costs incurred by USB in order to comply with all federal laws, presidential executive orders, and all federal regulations, I don't know how long this audit report, especially we're talking about 2022, 2023, and half of 2024, or as much as we can. In this state, when this when I say state, I mean this moment here, when the concern is around a specific federal order and federal law, I don't know if we have the time to go through all of these, Vice Chair Carey. I think that's my concern with the motion that's on the floor right now. I do like the motion, but again, to, I guess, Member Hart's point, I don't know how much time we have to get the answers surrounding Title IX. Okay. So I don't see any other hands, and I don't know if we just lost Vice Chair Carey. I think we did. We'll see if he can respond, but until then, Member Wood.
Can we scroll down on the document there, up? Thank you. I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Okay.
I move that the committee recommend that the board request USBE staff to evaluate direct and indirect costs associated with the new Title IX regulations and outline any discrepancies between current Utah law and the new federal regulations. And I'd like to speak to that.
Okay. So the motion before the committee, this is a substitute motion, is that the committee recommends that the board request USBE staff to evaluate direct and indirect costs associated with the new Title IX regulations and outline any discrepancies between current Utah law and the new federal regulations. Member Wood, please.
Well, I think that this motion gives us an opportunity to move forward and to provide some leadership. I noticed that the Speaker Schultz came out yesterday that the state is filing a case against these regulations at this time. We have laws that we know are out of compliance with these regs once they become in place on August 1st. And so there's a lot of discomfort and in that space. And I think if we move forward saying we're doing some understanding, we're trying to understand where we're at and what it means to our state, there's opportunity for leadership to work with the legislature to help us know how those in the field are going to have to deal with these things. And so I think this puts us in a better spot at this moment when we have 3 months before these things go into place.
Okay. I'm in communication with Vice Chair Carey via text. He is trying to jump back on. I'd like to wait, if you don't mind, for him to get back on. I know he was. He's asking if there's and again, I apologize. Staff, can you help out here? He says, is there a phone number he can call to join?
Yeah, sir, Scott.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, there should be one in his invite. If you can't see his invite, I think Alex, can you get that number to him? Over. Is Alex still on? Hang on, sir. We'll get him the dial-in number.
Okay.
Chair
Debbie,
Hymas,
yes.
could we take a short break? I'm actually needing to get on my phone. My son's in state volleyball, and I'm going to be taking the rest of the call as I drive to UVU to see him play in the state
Let's do it.
championship.
Let's take a few minutes and we'll get you situated and Vice Chair Carey, and then we can reapproach this.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Let's just take 5 minutes here. It's 2:24. We'll plan on 2:29.
I see we have a phone number that just joined. Vice Chair Carey, is that you by chance? Maybe not. Okay.
Do you see it, Vanessa, anywhere?
So that wasn't Vice Chair Carey. Have we heard from Member Wood? Is she back on?
That appears to be Vice Chair Carey's phone number.
Okay.
And Member Wood just joined.
Okay. So let's confirm then. Vice Chair Carey, can you hear us? If so, we cannot hear you. And let's jump Member Wood.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent. We just need to get Vice Chair Carey on here.
Chair Hymas, Scott.
Yes.
Yeah, Vanessa, if I may, sir, through you. Vanessa, can you see his number on there now?
I see the first three and the last three.
Okay, that's him. So did you try to let him in and he's not coming in? Over?
He's in the meeting. He's currently in the
Okay.
meeting. We're just not able to hear him, or he's not able to hear us. I'm not sure which one.
He says that he's being told he's on hold by Zoom.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Is he texting you, Ben?
Yeah, I texted him and asked him if he could hear the call. He says, no, it says I'm on hold. Now he says he can hear.
Okay. So I think he's in now.
Okay. Vice Chair Carey, can you give us a indication that you can hear us?
He needs to unmute, but he said, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, guys.
There he
go.
is.
Hey, sorry about that. It's not unmute, it's *6, but thank you.
Oh, *6. Learning new things. Okay.
I kept pressing the unmute button, but that wouldn't do it. It's *6.
Okay. So let's get caught up here. We have all of us back here. I think Member Hart, are you with us? Well, Member Hart was with us, and she may be back again, but let's get caught up. Vice Chair Carey dropped off as we were talking about the width of, or the breadth of his motion. I know I shared some concern there, and then Member Wood went to a substitute motion, which is on the screen here. And it is that the committee recommends that the board request USBE staff to evaluate direct and indirect costs associated with the new Title IX regulations and outline any discrepancies between current Utah law and the new federal regulations. This is similar to Vice Chair Carey's, but obviously more targeted. Vice Chair Carey, did you have comment to, I know there's a new motion on the floor, but I wanted to give you opportunity to speak to what your vision was on the motion.
Oh, thanks, Chair, and I'll keep it short. I think all the board members understand. I have no objection to prioritizing the Title IX research. It seems that the committee wants to prioritize that, and I don't have an objection to it. So if we want to say, let's do that first, and then the rest of the motion kicks in, I would be happy with that. But I do think that, I don't even know if we spend any Title IX money as USBE. I'm sure there's indirect costs, but I don't think we're a pass-through for any federal funds. So
I just think this is a unique opportunity for us as a board to look at the federal funds that are coming in and the cost to us as an entity and therefore the state in terms of the federal required compliance. So I couldn't support Board Member Wood's motion. I certainly understand it. And I would be happy to prioritize the Title IX in my own motion. But Chair, thank you for the opportunity to catch up.
Thank you. Member Wood, any thoughts or response to that? Member Wood, I don't know, we don't have a camera or a mic for you. There you go.
Sorry, I did lose you for a second. If you addressed me, I apologize.
Yeah, I just wondered if hopefully you were able to hear Vice Chair Carey's response to kind of concerns that we had. He mentioned that in his motion, he's happy to, or he's okay with, and I can't remember the exact words, but he's okay with targeting it towards Title IX, but would obviously prefer his motion compared to the one that was made. And I wondered what your thoughts on that was, as this is the motion that you put forward.
Well, I'm very interested in the outcome of his motion. I just want to know what that means actually in terms of time. Is that something that we would need to put some additional funds toward from the board to actually make happen? I mean, I just start thinking about, you have your special education law, you have your ESSA law. I mean, it's so big. Is this something that the staff can just do with what they've got at the time that they have? Or is this going to require extra funding, extra manpower? I want the reality of how we accomplish what's being asked. And maybe it's not as much as I think it is, but I'd love to know that before I mean, like, my motion stands. It's a substitute motion. It can be voted down and we can go back to his.
Okay. I see that Scott Jones has his hand up. Member Hart, you mind if we go to Scott first? Okay, Scott, please.
Thank you, Chair. If just for consideration, I just offer this for consideration by the esteemed committee members. Compliance is at the local education agency level. I mean, ultimately, yes, the USBE is responsible for compliance. However, in order to ensure that we were accurate in what by law, by program, by order, by regulation, we would have to likely, and to try to address Board Member Ward's questions, we'd likely have to ensure that we were capturing on an LEA by LEA basis their expenditures related to their compliance, i.e., personnel costs for compliance to laws and regulations. So I do want to offer for your consideration that we would have to definitely dive deeper if members of the committee accept that the consideration that costs can vary between or among LEAs for compliance based on what they choose to spend the money on for or to meet compliance. So it would involve a fairly amount of length of time and would need to involve the LEAs because we would want to be accurate in reporting back to the board. So does that help answer that question, Chair?
I believe so. And I'm gonna take I'm gonna give Leanne and Joe some liberties here as they're both on the phone. When you see that break, obviously I don't know if I can get your hand on a phone call, so you may need to interrupt if you have a comment, but let's not interrupt the person who's making the comment. We'll wait until they finish and then interrupt and say, hey, can I respond? So with that, Member Lear, you have a hand?
Yes. And it's been a while now. I am I am not prepared to put the burden that, even if we prioritize the Title IX issue, I'm not prepared to put that burden on the AAGs that we have. So I don't support member Carey's motion. I also don't support member Wood's motion, because why should we pursue this until we have a resolution, a joint resolution per SB, whichever one, 57, 51? Why would we even do this until we have that joint resolution from the legislature, which triggers it? So I think we're getting the cart before the horse. There's a likelihood that these regulations will be changed. Yet again, it's become a political football. So I hear that LEAs need help. There are attorneys out there that can help them. Some good ones, some not so good. And I think that finding ourselves in the middle of this would be both a financial nightmare and a political nightmare, because like everything else, these regulations are becoming politicized, and even how they go back and forth has become politicized. So I think the board's better off staying out of it until we have that joint resolution from the legislature.
Okay, thank you, Member Lear. For me, I don't, yeah, go ahead, Joe, or Vice Chair Carey.
It can wait, but I just wanted to clarify two things. One, I believe that the motion that I made would limit it to the costs, direct and indirect, to USBE. I understand that it is a much greater lift to find those costs for the LEA, but certainly we should know what it's costing us as an entity to comply with the items I listed in my motion. But in case there was any ambiguity, the motion should read that these are USBE direct and indirect costs. And I wanted to address that in light of what Deputy Superintendent Jones said. The second issue was, I do believe it is premature, and that's why my motion doesn't reference the SB 54, 57, because the trigger is that the legislature is supposed to move first, and they would direct us to move accordingly, or we then would have the freedom to move accordingly. But it seems like we're doing this backwards, that we're writing them to say, okay, do your job under the law you passed, pass this joint resolution, 2/3 of each house or each chamber. And that's great, but the reality is there may be an injunction. The trigger is August 1st. Passing this, I don't see any, and when I say this, I'm referring to Chair Hymas, your motion and Board Member Wood's motion. That could be moot very quickly, but finding out the finances and what's happening and the cost to our state in terms of USBE, that is something concrete and tangible that will pay dividends, I think, to us in terms of the data and what it's costing us, regardless of the court case that Utah filed, regardless of whether the legislature decides to act. And that's why I made my substitute motion. Chair, thank you again for the liberty.
Thank you. So what we'd like to do, and if I speak to the current motion on the floor as well, I think, you know, we just saw from the chat that Holly shared, just it's Title IX is an unfunded mandate. LEAs do not receive specific funding for Title IX, no cost to the USBE. So I wonder if that does say that this motion, it sounds like we already know, right? What's the direct and indirect costs associated with Title IX regs? Well, we have a pretty good idea. So I don't know if that undoes or if there's other things. But let's finish discussion on this, and then I guess I have a potential motion if these fail, but I don't know if I'm in favor of even this motion on the floor at this point. So Scott, I know your hand is up. I don't know if it was from the last time or if it's another hand.
It's new, sir.
Let's,
Through
if
Chair.
it's new, let's
Yeah.
hear from you.
Yeah, first of all, through you, Chair, to Board Member Carey, thank you, sir, for that clarification that it would be just USB costs, not, LEA. Sometimes when we say USB, we mean public education as a whole. So thank you, sir, for that clarity. The other piece to this is my understanding of my takeaway from Board Member Carey's motion is that his motion goes into a scope beyond just Title IX for Title 1, 2, and 3. I can state that we do actually have the costs associated, both direct and indirect, with USB staff and or USB requirements for oversight of the other title programs. So if that's also his intent to do that, we could do that fairly quickly. But then I would ask through you, Chair, if is his motion to conduct an audit on our calculations of the direct and indirect costs for oversight of all federal programs, which would be more on the line of internal audit, or is it just, just to provide that information of what we already have, as far as what the direct and indirect costs are for title programs that the USB incurs to oversee, distribute those funds, et cetera. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And I think
Chair, if I could respond.
Yeah, I want you to respond. I just want to recognize that we have a motion on the floor and we keep jumping back and forth between these two motions. And I wonder if we need to take care of this sooner than later. But Vice Chair Carey, please respond, and then we'll go to Member Hart, and then let's address one of this motion that's on the floor.
Can I speak after Member Hart?
Yes, yeah. So we'll go Vice Chair Carey, Member Hart, and then Member Wood.
Yeah, I only asked for permission to speak now because Deputy Superintendent Jones, I thought was asking a question through you to me, but the answer would be no. We're not. I am not in my motion asking for an audit of the numbers that you and your team have compiled. I've heard the last time you made a mistake was 14 years ago, so I'm good with the numbers that are there. I just want, the motion speaks for itself. So, but again, thank you. This does go beyond the scope of just Title IX. This is all of those aspects, and that's why I think it's an appropriate motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member Hart.
So I'm trying to sort out what we're talking about here. I believed that we started with an inquiry on how Utah code and how SB 57 influences how we respond to student discipline and issues when schools are interacting with parents. The whole money side of it is something different entirely to me. And that to me, that would be more appropriate to go to examine an audit request and something to move to our audit team. I think that we are putting the cart in front of the horse because of what's happening with our legislature. I do think it would be appropriate for the body, if it was the will of the board, to vote support, if that's what the board wanted to do, for investigation of a resolution or support for a resolution. But somebody said it and they're correct. It's not our show. But if we feel that the education community would really benefit from a resolution, then we could certainly send that message by making that motion and voting that forward. But as for these audits and these costs, this is not just Title IX, this is the whole thing. And I think we need to wait until after we see where the legislature goes with it. And if we do want an audit, I think we need to develop and go through the channels to put it on, put it into audit committee and really develop a coherent plan, audit plan for it. But I'm not interested in looking at any of the money items. I simply want to know where the space is in between parent rights and state Title IX and the Title IX regs. We're still reeling from the 2020 Title IX changes, and we're burning our people out, and it's not clear. And then there's all these laws and policies on top of it coming out of legislature, and we need some clarity in that space. So I'm against both these motions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Member Wood.
So I would like to amend my motion and probably need some help from all of you to determine how we want to move forward. In my mind, I would like to move that member carries be sent to audit to prioritize. And I would like to see, for me, the most important part, and I was using the motion that was recommended to us, but the most important part to me is to understand the new Title IX regulations and the discrepancies between current Utah law and how that is going to affect our LEAs.
Okay, I recognize that you are in a car. So
I am, I apologize.
yeah, this is going to be interesting to get this change of motion. If we can do that, I don't know if we, I'm trying to, I get that committees are not as structured as a board meeting, but do we need to vote on Member Wood's substitute motion, go back to Member Carey's motion, if these fail, and then create a new motion? I wonder if that would be I would rather do that so that we can start with something that
point of information,
please.
And again, Chair, I know it's informal, but if I understand, because I would accept that almost as a friendly amendment or a merger of the two positions. So, but I just want to make sure I truly understand what's being said. If it's taking my motion and just saying, look, we're going to say that this goes to audit.
If you want to marry these two, is that what we're saying? We want to marry these two motions and make them one?
I'm asking Board Member Wood if that's her intent, if that's her idea, with this provision that it be sent to audit. But I'm just unclear on what
to be prioritized, to be sent to audit, which is where these things come from, that they determine what's currently being done, what the scope of work is happening in our agency, how it moves forward. So I'd like to move your motion to audit to the audit committee to be prioritized.
Okay. Let's do that then. If we have both makers of the motions that have been considered here working together on one motion, then let's just move forward with that. And this will replace both motions that are before the committee.
Sure, well, that language.
Go ahead, Vice Chair Carey. I'm just saying, I don't know if you can see this on the screen. I just want to make sure that you and Member Wood have eyes on this.
I cannot. I'm just on the phone call.
Yeah.
But I would like to ask, is Vice Chair Hart chair of the audit committee?
Yes, she is.
If she would entertain a question, I would just like to know if the motion says we're going to prioritize this and send it to audit, what does that mean?
Did you hear that, Vice Chair?
Well, so it means that when it goes to the audit committee, so the audit committee is tasked with keeping a list of audits in a sequential list, and we look at which audits can overlap based on space and size, and which ones, you know, whether it's timely or not, like what time of year it would be done. And it directs and then those recommendations come to the full board. It puts it in a coherent order, and it fleshes out the audit questions, and makes sure that the audit team is answering the specific questions, because you know you could go in 100 million different directions on a couple of these broad topics. So it fleshes out an audit plan, and then it prioritizes it in the list. And then we determine, you know, can we be doing a second audit at the same time, or does it require the whole staff? That kind of thing. Does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And with that understanding, Chair, I to the extent when I hear the final motion, I'll know better. But with that understanding, I would support the new proposed motion by a board member Wood.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair Carey. Member Lear.
Oh, I don't care if it goes to audit, and I'm on that committee. However, I feel like that doesn't accomplish any of what Member Hart was talking about, in that we've got audits lined up for the next, I don't know, 18 months. So when it starts to happen, and it would be an all hands on deck audit, I would think it depends on if it gets into if it's just on the sexual harassment issue, or if it's on that's more simple. As a couple of staff members have noted, there really are no costs to USBE except possibly part of one person's salary. But if we're trying to provide services to LEAs or direction or guidance, it could be a lot more weighty. But that aside, if it gets into every other law that involves the USBE, that is an all hands on deck, bigger than any audit I've seen in 7 years. So I don't care if it goes to audit. It just isn't really going to be helpful in the way Molly thought she wanted it. And it's something that won't happen in my lifetime if it goes the other direction. So I feel like we're treating the board as way more important than it is. I acknowledge the constitutional responsibility, but the fact that we would evaluate all the costs for education is, if people like what we come up with, then great. They'll say, oh, look how this is hurting education. If they don't like it, then it will be minimized. So I think we're in a no-win position if it's the whole shooting match. So anyway, that's enough. You're right. Thank you.
Thanks, Member Lear. I just do we still have Debbie Davis on here? We are coming up on 3 o'clock, and since this is kind of a middle of the month meeting, I hate to go over, but I would like to hear Debbie Davis, what this would look like, how quick could this be done if it were referred to the audit committee? Any thoughts on there? Is Debbie still with us?
Yes, I'm still here, Chair Imus.
Thank you. Could you speak to that?
Sure, absolutely. So what Audit Committee Chair Hart indicated was correct. Essentially, we would fill out a risk prioritization form that would outline some of the questions to be answered. Essentially, that helps us identify risk, and we're required by the standards that we follow to do risk-based audits. So it would go to Audit Committee. They would consider the prioritization form, and then they could make a recommendation to send that to the board. So that would take a month or so. There are currently 3 other audits that have been approved by the board, because the board retains approval of audits that we do. So the board can decide priority of those audits. So where this audit falls within the other three that have been prioritized would have to be considered. The three that are on there, Audit Committee Chair Hart was right. We're probably at 12 to 18 months to get those three audits done with the current staffing levels that we have. So if this was added to the bottom of the list, it would be a couple of years probably before we would have audit results related to this. And then how long the audit takes, if it's just at the USBE, those are a little bit shorter because it's easier to get information internally from our staff, but it would probably take, and I don't know, I mean, we haven't planned the audit, we haven't identified all of the questions, so it's somewhat dependent on what all that would look like, but it wouldn't surprise me if it took 10 to 12 months. So potentially two and a half years before we'd complete the audit. But again, potentially because we haven't scoped it, we haven't planned it. There's a lot of unknowns.
So this essentially what I'm hearing is this would be well underway before we even receive the audit feedback to say whether or not what we're hoping to do moving forward. We would already be, well beyond. Okay. Member Hart.
Sorry, so the agenda item, let's go back to the agenda item. It was to request consideration of legislative action under SB 57 in 2024 regarding U.S. Department of Education Title IX regulations in light of Utah HB 257. I know we're going off into this other space, and quite frankly, my interest as a member of the committee is to get clarity on Title IX in relation to specific Utah code. And I would like to ask the legislature to clarify that. As an education stakeholder, I believe our education partners deserve that consideration. I am not, if we want to do an audit, that's fine, but that is not where I am interested in. That is not a priority for me right now.
Thank you, Member Hart. I think I'm in a similar boat with you. Let's look at the motion that's on the floor. We can vote. We need to move forward here. The motion to amend is that the committee recommend that this issue be referred to the audit committee to consider prioritizing an audit evaluating USBE's costs as an agency as outlined in Board Member Carey's original motion. I'm gonna refer to Member Wood and Vice Chair Carey to make sure that this reflects what their motions are aiming for.
That it did leave out my desire to have the discrepancies between the current Utah law and the new federal regulations be done. That's not being referred. I don't want that referred to audit. I want that done.
You want that
like
separate?
By next. That's separate. Yes, it was two separate items. I was going to incorporate Vice Chair Carey's motion in there to support his work because I do think it would be valuable to us to know over time. But I want the timeliness of what is this doing to us right now in terms of what is coming out of federal regulations versus what we have as law versus what is happening to our LEAs and how they have to comply.
So I'm guessing that your motion then this other piece is that the board, I'm not guessing, I'm trying to piece together what you're asking for, and that's that the board requests the legislature to consider the application of SB 57 to the Title IX. There you go at the bottom there, to the Title IX regulations. Is that what you're wanting to add in there, Member Wood? Again, understanding
does the outcome of this show that here's where we're out of compliance, here's what we're going to fight, and this is where SB 57 comes in? Help me understand if that language gives me my intent.
It does to me, but I'm happy to hear from other committee members if that. So it would say that the one that the board requests that the legislator consider the application of SB 57 to the Title IX regulations, which would answer all of those questions that you had. What does this look like? How does this work on a state level with the federal law? And I guess kind of the effects of LEAs, like where they are. Member Hart, you have your hand up. Is this okay? Vice Chair Carey?
With that language, I believe that reflects my intent. I would defer to Board Member Wood, but yes, that combination works for me.
So let me restate the motion then, and we can go from, oh, I see Member Lear. Go ahead, Member Lear.
Can I address a question to Member Wood?
Please.
By the way, I hate these virtual meetings. Leanne, I'm trying to understand on number one, why you're insistent on that when the legislature has to do a joint resolution first. So how do you think we're not getting ahead of the legislature as it relates to SB 57?
Well, and I didn't add SB 57 in there, so that's why I'm asking if this does what I need. I want to say, here's what the regulations, and to be honest, I started the 1,557 pages. I didn't get through it all. We got it yesterday at 1 o'clock. So that had all of the comments and all of the how the regulations were put forward and why they didn't change them and what they changed. I didn't get through it all. I can't do it in 24 hours. But I want to know, here's Utah law, here's the regs, here's where we're out of compliance. That's all I want to know. I'm not asking for a resolution. I'm not asking, I want to
but when you say
be educated on the problems.
Okay, and I don't want to be argumentative, but I'm saying when we're out of compliance, who do you mean by we're? The USBE?
Well, there is certain Utah law that will not be in compliance when these regs come to fruition on August 1st. I am told
okay.
that there
I
is
say
Utah law that will
right.
be out of compliance.
Okay. So that's what some people have told
And I want to know what that is. Yes.
Okay, some people have told you, and okay, that helps me a little bit. Thank you very much.
That was what was in our memo to begin with, that said we have Utah law that will not be in compliance. That was in our memo for this meeting. But there was no list of what those things were.
Okay.
So I added some possible language to kind of expand this a little bit to see if that helps address Member Wood's concern. Do you want to see if that works?
Yeah, let's see here. So
Yes, number one is what my intent. Number two, with the SB 57, I will need further guidance on that. Because as Member Lear said, we don't have a resolution. We don't have communication with legislature on this. We know, as I said before, they're filing a lawsuit on this. So I need further guidance on it.
So Member Wood, you're looking to, let me just read the motion. And then it says that the committee recommend that staff identify where state law is out of compliance with federal law in light of the new Title IX regulations. 2, that the board requests that the legislature consider the application of SB 57 to the Title IX regulations. And 3, that this item be referred to the audit committee to consider prioritizing an audit evaluating USBE's costs as an agency as outlined in Board Member Carey's original motion. Any discussion to this motion? I just want to say this is a lot. I mean, I quite frankly, I'm just trying to do my best and my due diligence of saying, what does this mean for our schools? What does this mean for our children? What does this mean for the USBE and for the state? What does this look like going forward? I'm just trying to find answers here. I don't know if, I mean, it's not a perfect motion, but at least it gets us going somewhere. I know we've had a few comments of cart before the horse, but again, I'm just trying to, for me anyway, I'm trying to get some answers and ways in which we can align with law and protect our kids at the same time. So any other comments from the committee? Seeing none, let's vote.
Chair, Board Member Carey is a yes on the motion.
Thank you. Member Wood?
Yes.
I'm not seeing Member Hart.
Oh, sorry.
I guess I can get my reaction up here. So it looks like, and you can say it verbally if you'd like, Member Hart.
Yeah, I'll go.
Here it is. Okay, so it looks like that passes 4-1 with Member Lear in opposition. Committee members, thank you for this. This was quite the discussion. I appreciate your time in the middle of May. It's a busy time for all of us, but I appreciate it. With that, that brings us to our last agenda item, adjournment, which is our favorite of all. So this meeting is adjourned and we will see each other in our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.